If Africa is going to become a member of the UN Security Council, a permanent member, they must have the full rights, just like the other 5 members, which means they must have veto power.
Does Africa really need veto power in the United Nations Security Council? Anyway, I don't even think that is the right question to ask. Does Africa really need the United Nations? So in this video, I want us to explore if Africa really needs the United Nations, because we've known UN as an organization has been, known as the worldwide organization, helping with so many different agendas, be it the SDGs, be it security in the world, be it health with the World Health Organization. But does Africa really need the United Nations? Before you even get to the video, welcome back to Africa is Marwa. I mean, if you're coming back for another time, I really appreciate it. You're taking the conversation around Africa seriously, and we hope that the content that we are posting are actually reaching a wider context in the African continent. But if you're coming for the first time, why haven't you subscribed yet? Please don't forget to hit on that subscribe button and like the video, and ensure that don't just like but share this video wide so that every African can be able to hear this kind of conversation, because we want every African to really take the mandate of African issues. Well, so recently I posted a video of Arikana Chihombori, actually talking about how Africa really needs to have veto power in the United Nations Security Council.
If Africa is going to become a member of the UN Security Council, a permanent member, they must have the full rights, just like the other 5 members, which means they must have veto power. Inviting Africa to the table and then asking them to remain mute is an insult not only to the African leaders, but it is an insult to 1.4 billion people. We appreciate what Ambassador Greenfield is saying. We appreciate the efforts she has made. But if she is going to complete this journey that has been going on for far too long, a journey that clearly exemplifies the continued disrespect of the African continent, Ambassador Greenfield must push for us to take this issue to the finish line.
When I posted this video, I mean, people were so reactive to it because they felt like Africa doesn't really need veto power in the United Nations Security Council. Actually, they said Africa doesn't really need the UN. I mean, it is opinions of Africa, because we really want to incorporate every African voices and how African feel about the United Nations. I'm not saying that the UN hasn't been helping Africa, but we all know what has been happening, and especially with the UN Security Council. How many wars do we have in Africa at the moment? And have they been able to solve any of the wars? Have they been able to even put those wars in the agenda seriously, like the way they have done with the Ukraine, with the Israel and Gaza war? I mean, these are some of the things that make Africans feel that truly we don't really need the United Nations, because it is a dormant organization. It is a failed organization for a very long time. They haven't been actually focusing much on African issues. And I just want us to go through some of the comments, some of the fascinating comments, because these are the voices of Africans. And I took it seriously, listening from, different people from Nigeria, from even Jamaica, contributing to African matters. So it means that this conversation is actually going even overseas. And we really want to ensure that even the Africans in diaspora are able to understand this kind of conversation, because we really want to you to come back home and make Africa great, make Africa work. Yeah, so I want us to dive deep into these comments, and then you're gonna tell me what you really feel like. Do you agree with these Africans that for real Africa doesn't need the United Nations? Or are you still thinking Africa still needs the United Nations, and we still need to be part of the organization, even without the veto power in the United Nations Security Council, or even other roles. It's not just this, the UN Security Council. We have like the World Health Organization that is dealing with health, but do we even, as African, have authority over them?
Well, we know that Dr. Arikana Chihombori and other great Pan-Africans have argued that Africa really, with the 54 nations, deserves veto power in the United Nations Security Council or even other councils that are there in the United Nations. But this logic is very simple because Africa should have a say in global decisions. I mean, we are over 1.4 billion people, and we really need to have people who can speak for us at the global stage. A good example is on the decision that deals with international sanctions that affect African countries and African economies, on the global peace and security, I mean, resolutions for Africa, and the ability to actually counter the Western dominance and international policies. So these arguments really make sense. And while they might make sense for our Pan-Africans, but many Africans still feel like this is not yet enough. Africa still don't need to have veto power in the United Nations, or we still don't have to rely on the United Nations. And the Sahel region has actually shown that Africa can be independent. Well, I'll just head over and read some of the great comments that we had and the voices of Africans, especially from the TikTok video that we posted of Dr. Arikana Chihombori. Well, one of the comments from James Nderi said, we Africans should be approved as equal members of the United Nations Security Council. Then we should not be under some conditions, but Africa should be treated as equal like other members. No colors, no discrimination. And we also had another one named as Variance Life saying, we don't have proper African leaders. That is why they should remain mute and listen. So the idea is when we have these leaders attend all these forums, and you know how it has always happened, they've always remained mute and silent when Africa still get discriminated, which is very, very sad. Another one said, UN is owned and controlled by America. So there is a feeling that the UN is for the America, therefore it should be dismantled and reorganized before we can even have a say or veto power as Africa. The other comment that really caught our attention as Africa is Marwa was on this user that said, the UN should be completely dismantled and a new organization based on a real democracy formed with no one having a veto power and majority rule take the effect. And we really found this to be very, very accommodating, especially for even the third world countries or even the continent that we feel like might not have power. And so this is what should be happening, and this is the feeling of many Africans, that the UN is actually a dead organization and it actually should be dismantled. Other insightful comment was from this user who said that the UN just felt like, or the ones who are leading the United Nations just felt like we Africans are idiots because of the type of leaders we have. I mean, we call them puppets, and you know them very well. If you're from Africa, you know the puppet that we have is a president. Okay, sorry. But Africa doesn't need them. They're the ones that need Africa. And this is so true that they need Africa because we have the resources, and they know why they're doing that. They know why they aren't giving us veto power yet. Dave Papa said, the United Nations organization has fully failed to solve Palestine issue, Korean crisis, Taiwan crisis, USA, Russia conflict. Africa doesn't really need them to be in. Africa doesn't really need to be in the United Nations organization. We need only and only a strong African Union. And she really appreciated Dr. Arikana because she doesn't hold anyone to change. Say no to change, because we have felt like African has been chained for a long time into this dependent crisis. Yeah, Marshall King came up with another insightful comment, especially criticizing the African leaders. And he's actually pointing out that African leaders are not working especially for Africa. They can actually stay at home and not just go to the United Nations meetings. We have seen how they have gone and how they have been treated with so much disrespect. So he is saying that they don't deserve to, answer to their calls and even attend to this UN meeting every year because they don't get the respect that they do deserve. And this is totally true. If we don't get that respect, then there's no need for even us to have veto power or even us to attend all these UN meetings that don't really make much sense to us. D actually came up with a comment and said that the United Nations giving Africa veto power can never happen. I mean, because they have accepted to be restricted for so long, and that is us, African, our leaders. Yet, we are the superpower because we have the people, we have the resources, and they can't stay away from us. Without us, they are nothing, and they know that very well, and that is why they have been fighting and holding us hostage, not to have the veto power or even a say in these councils. Ada Ugu, I believe from Nigeria, says she's agreeing with Madam Arikana Chihombori that Africa leaders have sold us out. They've sold our prestige, our esteem, our seriousness. They've only prioritized personal interest above national interest, which is very true. And this won't allow them to speak out. And that is why we have Dr. Arikana Chihombori and others just trying to air the African voices so that we can get the veto power. But we've seen the puppets that we have can't speak for us. Solo says, hey Africans, don't go to that council. Respect yourself. You can get the veto's powers unless you become self-sufficient. So he's actually pointing out that we need to first of all become independent as Africa, then we can start asking for those veto power, which is also true because how can we be on the big table when we can't even solve the crisis that we have as Africans? And we had a fascinating comment from Jamaica from John Brown saying that Africa must stay away from the United Nations Security Council. And also Jeffa say that we don't need a seat on UN Security Council. It's a scam. The body belongs to the Europeans. We shall create our own Security Council for Africa. That's it. We need to have our own Security Council as Africa. And that is why the African Union should really first check on how they can come up with, the Security Council that can tackle the African issues and all the wars that we have in Africa. We hope Mohammed Yusuf will help us with that. Finally, we can finish up with comments from Marcia Anderson, and she's saying that Africa can and will do without them. Then we have Nkosi reminding us of the famous Robert Mugabe, and he said, it is time for action now. Africa has to wake up. Africa, the time is now. Africa must stop the West from reaching Africa. We have said this for a very long time. We must stop the puppets, and we know we are going to solve our issues on our own without needing any veto power from the United Nations Security Council. All these are very, very solid questions. So, if many believe that the United Nations is a dead organization, should Africa be looking for a way in or a way out? Tell me in the comment section. What do you think? Should we be thinking of how can we get the veto power, or should we be discussing how Africa can be independent and Africa can take the lead? We know there's a rise of BRICS and growing calls for Africa to move away from the Western dependency, and this is a real solution for Africa, especially to strengthen our African Union and create a powerful global institution amongst ourselves. The key question we should be asking ourselves is Africa. What is the role of BRICS in Africa? Because we've seen they've also been developing some interest. And also, what kind of calls do we have to strengthen African Union instead of relying on the Western-led institutions? And also the idea of the Africa Security Council. Yeah, tell me what you think in the comment section, and if you agree. But let's proceed with the video.
Well, looks like this is a conversation that is not ending anytime soon, especially with Africans. I know we have our leaders, our presidents who still think, they need to be part of the UN. But, this common feeling for Africans, especially, we would say the minority of Africans who aren't in the leadership roles. We know the puppets that we have as presidents can actually support that. We still need to, be under the world peace and all that. But many Africans are starting to realize that these world organizations don't really care about Africa. And for a long time, Africa has had resources. We are now over 1 billion people, but most of the discussions that really are for Africa are not yet discussing this, big table. So we have been thinking that it is now high time we actually strengthen the African Union so that, we can be able to solve some of these issues on our own. Talk about the Africa continental trade area. I mean, why hasn't this been a realization? It is because they still don't want us to trade amongst ourselves. They still want to have their puppets leading us so that we can create more divisions, more borders, restrictions. And we really appreciate the Sahel states with Ibrahim Traore and Asimbi Goita, those who keep on reminding Africans that it is high time we stop being puppets. It's high time for Africa to be independent. Please tell me in the comment section, what do you really feel? Do the opinion make sense that Africa really doesn't need the UN? Or do you think we still keep up with how Africa has been? Anyway, that was my time. I really appreciate you for watching this video to the end. If you haven't liked it, I mean, what are you still waiting for? If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and make sure you hit on that notification bell because it's really important so that anytime we do post a video, you'll get it on your timeline. But in the meantime, I close it there and I'm hoping to see you next time. Bye bye.